I'm the bad guy. I'm the, I'm
Hi everyone and welcome back to Across the Gridiron. I am Matt. After a week off, sat on the bench, I am back in the seats this week and I'm joined once again with my man and yours, Eddie Equo. Eddie, my good friend, how are you doing?
He's back again. He's back again.
Yeah, I truly am the Zach Wilson to your tour, aren't I? Really,
I'm doing well. It's been a crazy couple of full disclosure, guys. We're typically very, very professional. We usually get everything
we're not.
scripted on. Script ready. I had to take a trip to Birmingham and the one in the United Kingdom because I know there's one in the US
There's
as
four
well.
at least.
Is there four?
Yeah, yeah. Got to go to America, get lost, try to go to.
Like I'm going to Birmingham. I'm like, which one? I'm like, oh, not this. I know this Birmingham. Is it what? Is it Alabama? Is it
Birmingham,
Birmingham?
Alabama. There we
Yeah,
go.
there's one. Is there? But then there's another one. Where's that one? Is it Pittsburgh? Is there one in Pittsburgh?
See, I like the way
Um,
we're already like 36, a minute into this podcast, and we've already gone completely off the rails.
we have gone off the rails. So
Th- th-
welcome
th-
everyone.
yeah, this is how we're going to get to those 50,000 subscribers here, Eddie, that you mentioned at the start. This is how we're going to do it. Just us rambling
Yeah.
on for a bit.
This is, and listen, guys, hit that like and subscribe button. Help us grow. We really appreciate all of you that come back and
Because why would you not after an intro like this?
exactly. Where are you gonna get an intro like this?
I'm the,
Matt, you know what's up, right? It's excitement now in the NFL. It's getting real now, right? It's getting real. So I'm really excited about what we're gonna be talking about today.
Absolutely. And what are we going to be talking about? Well, the first thing, this is, as I said, where the season really feels like it's kicked up a notch because the schedules have been released. The fans across the NFL looking at who they've got, who's got the easy runnings, who's got the hard runnings, who's already making excuses for why they're not going to go to the Super Bowl, and which fans who are wearing a t-shirt that says America's team are already thinking this is how we're going to plot our way to Super Bowl and are completely going to be way off the mark. But look, the one bombshell, what we're going to kick the season off, it's going to be the Eagles versus the Cowboys, as Jalen Hurts
Oh.
will once again lay the smackdown on the Dallas Cowboys, fresh off his Super Bowl win. Prescott has a lot to prove. This is the big one. Obviously, you knew you were going to play these guys twice, but what a way to kick the season off for you, Eddie.
What a way. It's massive, really massive, Matt, because this is about legacy. This is legacy stuff we're talking about. Jalen Hurts has got the ring, kudos, they've got the ring, but that all that's got is doubters, right? Everyone's slagging him off, saying he's no good. But imagine Jerry Jones with so much love to actually stuff it up the Super Bowl champions, at their hometown, banner coming down. And winning a trophy is like a big thing, right? In the UK, you have teams do an open top boss parade. I don't know if they do that in the US too as well. They do have a open
Yeah,
top
I mean, they have these
parade.
huge celebrations. They go to bloody Disney World, don't they? Let alone, and then they do praise it and they do something else. I know you pretty much shut off the NFL for about a good month after the Eagles won the Super Bowl, but yes, they do celebrate a little bit.
Yeah, I had a problem with green. I just didn't want to see too much green going on around. Yeah, so listen, it's the first game of the season. I think if you listen to everyone that's talking about this game and the beginning fixture, no one is giving Dak Prescott a chance. No one is giving Dallas a chance. You're thinking that Dallas is just bringing people off the street, right? They've just got a bunch of college players. They're just gonna assemble and go off and try and play the Eagles. The one thing that I always say, when the first game of the season starts, is everyone is different. every team is not the same team of last season. And that's the beautiful thing about the NFL, right? You see a team that, I mean, no one thought the Detroit Lions were gonna have the season that they were gonna have like 2 seasons ago. Because the season before then, I think they were like 3-13-1 or something was their record, right? They weren't that good, right? And there's so many, accounts in the NFL where a team would have a terrible season, right? And then the next season is a completely different identity. I feel that, a lot of the times for the start of the season, the only thing that you have to go on is the record of the last season, right? You look at how the teams played, and sometimes we forget the context of the season. I think that the Dallas Cowboys, especially under Dak Prescott, has always won in the regular season. People say when he gets to the postseason, he doesn't do well, but in the regular season, he always does well. And last season, there was no Dak Prescott, so the Cowboys had a mediocre record, but it really wasn't Dak's record. So you start the NFL season with the Eagles. They're going to be feeling themselves Super Bowl champs. They're going to have all their families there, wives, girlfriends, significant others, mistresses, all of those things, all going to be there, all going to be in the first game. And the Dallas Cowboys come into town and they're gonna think business as usual. There is something like the Super Bowl slump, right? There is something. Very few teams don't catch that bug, right? And even Kansas City Chiefs, a few times they've come out of a Super Bowl and they don't look themselves the first couple of games. So I look at this game, obviously very excited about it. Um, I am very positive that it's not gonna be the Saquon Barkley show like everyone thinks, right? And we're gonna talk about him, throughout the season. But he had over 300 carries, last season. That has got to do something, to running backs. We've seen running backs fall off cliffs, after doing a lot of heavy lifting. We saw what happened to Zeke Elliott. He was basically the bell cow, played almost every, down for the Dallas Cowboys. And you just get to a point you hit that wall. Now, I think Saquon Barkley is different slightly, but at the same time, I think it was still a lot of carries, that he had last season. So how's that going to play out, in this next season? We've got to look at, the team, right? What they've got in the offense, they've got AJ Brown, Devonta Smith. Are they going to be that motivated, for that first game of the season? I know it's the Dallas Cowboys, and probably why the NFL put that game together to sort of say, let's get that rivalry, going as quick as possible before either the Dallas Cowboys become too terrible or the Eagles, don't recover for the Super Bowl. Let's get that shine, make that money. Because the Dallas Cowboys game always brings, the people to the yard.
I
Um,
think I think the reason why they've done it is twofold. It's one, just to because if the Cowboys win, think
yeah.
about how excited you guys will be for the season. You think you're going to win the Super Bowl. They're going to build you. You're going to build yourself up to a pedestal, and that's going to make the collapse pretty funny. But then at the same time, when you lose that game, and I didn't say if, I meant when, right?
I saw what you
But
did there. I was
yeah,
like, did you say
so when you
when?
lose that game, think about how miserable and depressed the fan base will be. They'll be calling for Jerry Jones's head. You'll talk about Pickens being the worst trade in NFL history, all this kind of stuff. So it's set. It's the T-shirt says it all. America's team. You like to be the story, and one way or not, you guys are going to be the story. But look, it's a massive game to start off. September the 4th, Lincoln Financial Field, and it's a big rivalry to kick off, and it's with all in reality, it's probably not the game that the Eagles would have chosen either. Right.
Nope.
It's definitely not the game they would have chosen. They've got to play you twice in the regular season anyway,
Yeah.
and that'll be it because you're not getting to the playoffs. But they'll play you twice over the course of the over the regular season. But it's a bit into the sort of into the lion's den, shall we say, for that first game. But the one thing I want to look at next, obviously, we are an international podcast from
Yeah.
the NFL standpoint. We are based over here in the UK, as you can probably tell by the way that we talk. So, I just want to quickly look at the international games because, again, these are some of the big things now that are on the calendar. 7 games this season, and first of all, I'm going to say something that pretty much every international podcast has said. How amazing is it still? I still can't believe now we used to have when I got back into NFL, when I got you into NFL, whatever it was, 10, 15 years ago,
Yeah.
we think we had maybe one game, and that was a stretch. We've now got 7 international games in 2025, and I'll just quickly read them out to you. So we've got Kansas City Chiefs and against the Chargers. That is going to be in Sao
Chargers.
Paulo.
Yeah.
You got the Vikings against the Steelers in Dublin, and
Dublin.
you've got
Yeah.
the three London games are the Vikings and the Browns, the
Yeah.
Broncos and the Jets, the
Yep.
Rams, and of course the London Jaguars. I mean, sorry, the
Yeah.
Jacksonville Jaguars.
That's in
And
Wembley.
yeah, that'll be at Wembley, and then you've got the Falcons and the Colts, and then last but not least in Madrid, you've got the Commanders, who are probably going to beat the Miami Dolphins. So they are the 7 games. Now, Eddie, I'm assuming, are you going to try and get across all 3 of them this year?
I am going to try and go across all. I've already started looking at the tickets for the Jaguars and the Rams game. I think that's October 19th, so I should get a ticket for that. I'm waiting for the other ones to drop in. So yes, I should be in all of those games. It's I look forward to the international games because, like you said, you got me into this thing. This is your fault, right? If
Yeah,
there's
sorry,
anyone
mate. Sorry to everybody watching. This monster has been created by me. The one simple question leads to a 20-minute rant about the Cowboys. No matter what the question is, I can
Yeah,
ask Eddie a question about, how do you think the Browns are shaping up this year, and it'll turn into a rant about Dak Prescott.
yeah.
But yeah, so this is all
Um,
my fault.
it was your fault because you remember the I went to the Cowboys came that year, to play. It was Tony Romo, Des Bryant. And I went for the activities on the Saturday. They do all the stuff, the players come, and then you get a chance to do the 40 yards dash, and all of that stuff. I still got a picture of myself doing, holding the NFL football and trying to do like, one of those quarterbacks, things. And the Dallas Cowboys won that game as well. So that was it. It was the Dallas Cowboys and the cheerleaders. They got me hooked. Um,
I thought
and
it might have been a weekend with me, but no, turns out the Cowboys cheerleaders is what it
um, and
takes.
and since then it's taken off. And ever since then I've made a deliberate attempt to go, conscious effort to go to the international game. So I love it. I love the crowd. I love, the atmosphere. It's so amazing how everyone buys into it at the stadium, right? There is nothing that close to the kind of thing that you feel when you get to an NFL game in the UK because of the way it's set up, right? Last year, we were all singing, to, Sweet Caroline. The whole stadium like breaks out, in song. And it's like sometimes I just want to like stop and just record like everything
Yeah, but
going
the
on.
one thing I will say, yes, we sing Sweet Caroline, but there are some good things as well that happen. There are some good things that happen at those games because
Yes.
my God, that song has played out.
Yes.
But I mean, I remember, just trying to watch, watch the NFL. You was basically scrambling around for highlights
Yes.
on a Sunday morning, and they were from maybe the games 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
This is before YouTube was particularly great. So the access that we now have in order
Oh,
to see these games, to experience these games, and the weird thing about it, because I've been to a couple. Obviously, I live in Sheffield, so
Sheffield, yeah.
I'm a bit far removed to a bit far removed from London. And annoyingly, just looking at these dates, the NFL have decided to drop three of the games on one of them on my daughter's birthday weekend, and one of them on my missus' wedding anniversary weekend. So
Yeah,
that's good. That's really considerate. But the thing is, what I find amazing is that you go to these games, and yes, people will choose what team they want to follow. If you're a relatively new fan, you
yeah,
tend to be pushed towards the home team, which is
yeah.
often the Jags
Jaguars, yeah, yeah.
mostly. But everyone's there in their own jerseys. You see people in Browns and Broncos and Bengals and
Chiefs.
Steelers in everywhere. But it's such a friendly sort of atmosphere, right? Rather than obviously say we go to, if I can imagine, if you go to the game in the US when you've got clearly got a home team and you've got an away team, there's
Yeah.
much more animosity in that.
Yes.
Where there's none of that. It's a fantastic atmosphere, and it's been great. Obviously, you know, you became a fan by going to those games. Just before that, you were just a delusional Arsenal fan, and now you're a delusional Cowboys fan as well. And
Someone
and
said to me, "How could I support two teams that create so much emotional heartache?"
try being a Sheffield Wednesday fan and a Miami Dolphins fan. Jesus Christ. Um, but you get you you know these international games have brought on a generation of fans, of new
Yeah,
fans, and also rewarded some of the fans from previous generations, like myself. My old man. He used
yeah.
to when football first started being played in like the showed in the UK in about the 70s and the 80s. He used to watch it all the time on highlights, but he never thought he'd get to go to a regular season game
Mm,
until we took him down. So it's fantastic rewards. It's creating a brand new generation of fans, and I appreciate for a lot of the fans, who follow these teams. It's a hell of a way to go, especially if you
yeah,
lose one of your home games. But I
yeah.
think the players love it as well. So it's a fantastic atmosphere, and these are the certain things that do we look forward to the most. I'm just trying to keep this ball rolling because again we can probably talk about this
We
for
could.
a while. So let's just look at some of the more noticeable games or notable
Yeah.
games I think from this. Which let's try and keep this short and sweet. But which are the games that are really sort of standing out to you?
Um, I mean, everyone obviously is talking about the Cowboys Chiefs game. That's happening in Thanksgiving, as well.
You mean
Um,
everyone in your household? Right. Okay.
so, but I mean, there's some great games, already. The Bills, their schedule looks brutal,
Hmm.
as well. Commanders seem to have a fairly light, schedule, the way that things are going. So they might be a decent, team. Um, I think the other game, that is sure to have a lot of sparks. No one's really talking about it, but the Bengals and the Ravens, right? Everyone, would be expecting the Bengals almost made the playoffs, last season. And of course, the Ravens were expected to go all the way. So I think Lamar Jackson will have a little bit of pressure, to start well, this season and go all the way. Um, but there are also some interesting revenge games, that are in the schedule. Um, Seahawks, Vikings. So Sam Donald, goes back to, the team that he went. What was it, 14 and what, 12, 13? I can't remember the record now. And then after that, they were like, no, thank you very much. See you later. So he goes back to that team. I'm sure he would want to stick it, right up, in a place where the sun doesn't shine for them. And also, if Aaron Rodgers, gets to Pittsburgh Steelers, because I think they play the Jets as well at some point. So that could be interesting, with all the narrative that builds as well. So there's some, few needle games, as it were, in the league this season that I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to.
I mean, the AFC is going to be interesting again because you mentioned the Chiefs. They've got they've got to play the Bills and they've got to play the Ravens, right? So the Chiefs are playing, two of their biggest rivals for the AFC. I think this is going to be a big season for the Ravens. We talked about Lamar being in the MVP
Yeah.
um conversation a lot last season, but again, as a team, they just couldn't get it done. And the Bills, again, their chief, the hex that the Chiefs have over them in the playoffs, again, came true again. So, you know what's going to happen. The Bills are going to actually wipe the floor with the Chiefs in the regular season. They'll play each other in the AFC Championship, and the Chiefs will absolutely hammer them.
Yeah. Which
So,
is kind of how it always tends to go, right? They leave it for when it really counts, to lay the
well, they
smack
do.
down.
They
Yeah.
do. I want to keep a tally. I mean, it'll be interesting to hear from people who are watching this, that, what kind of things should we try and track over the course of the season? Because we will do our predictions.
Yeah.
I also wonder how many sort of various cliches we're going to come out with over the course of the season. How many well-trodden things are we going to say? So, how many times do you think over the course of the season we will say, oh, the Chiefs just aren't playing well, are they? But they've won again. Oh, they really 5 out of 10, but they won by a field goal. Oh no, they're unbeaten and they're on the way to Super Bowl again.
Yeah. I'll tell you one game, I was just watching before we started the podcast. I was watching the Commanders and Lions. And of course they play, again this season. The Lions will be feeling like, they should have been the one winning that Super Bowl because they had the number one offense, last season. They were smacking people all left, right, and center, including my Dallas Cowboys, and they were very high on getting to the Super Bowl, and the Commanders, firmly, put them in the place. So I think they're going to be looking at that game. I think that might be week 9 or 10, in the schedule, and they'll be thinking to themselves, "Yeah, it's time to get our own back now."
No, absolutely, absolutely. Well, look, the one thing that we know for sure is there's going to be. Uh, we can look at these games now, but we can guarantee, but by week 2, week 3, there's going to be lots of other interesting games that we're going to look forward to. But tell you what, let's call part 1 there, and we will be back in part 2 to look at a quarterback who has just got paid. See you soon.
I'm the, I'm the, I'm the.
Welcome back to part 2 of Across the Gridiron. So, Eddie, there was Mr. Irrelevant got paid. So let's talk about some money. So Brock Purdy has just signed a 5-year contract with the 49ers. Now let's look at some of these numbers here. So it's a 5-year contract, $265 million extension with $181 million guarantee. Jesus wept. That is some big, big money. I mean, it makes your head spin. If I think Brock Purdy should look to maybe sponsor this podcast, and if he does, even a fraction of that, we will sing his praises uh, until the
This
day
will
he
be a Brock
retires.
Purdy safe corner. This will be a Brock
Absolutely,
Purdy
this is
safe
Purdy. This
zone.
can be your safe space. A little, a little on a little island, a little remote island, out some way away from San Fran. But yeah, let's look at some of these content. We talked about the 181 million guarantee.
Yeah.
That's an average 53 million a year. He's now one of the top paid quarterbacks, which isn't a bad rise up from, as I said, from being Mr. Relevant. He's got a no trade clause, which is rare.
Yeah.
Only 7 QBs have that.
Yeah.
So is this this is said, is this right? Does this make sense? Is it justified? First of all, is it based on performance? He had a great year. He took him to the Super Bowl. Fair play. He he's in there with, you know he's probably a step below that elite quarterback. So when I mean in those elites where you've got Jackson, you've got Mahomes and Burrows and so on and so forth. But he's probably at least a step or two below that. Do you think he's worth this?
Listen, these are astronomical numbers, right? There's so many zeros in front of the numbers. I even trip, right? Just looking at it. Um, it's a very difficult thing to say in the NFL because, do people really deserve that money? We have these conversations every time someone gets paid in our own sport. Where they talk about 200, K a week, 200,000 pounds a week, or 300,000 pounds a week. And people say, are the players worth it? I mean, they're worth what the market say that they're worth, right? It's a demand and supply. I think the question that you might have, and the question that a lot of fans may have, and maybe San Francisco fans, is anybody else going to pay Brock Purdy that money, right? Is there another team that would have paid, 50 something odd million to Brock Purdy? And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know lots of teams that would have paid that. The Browns surely, because they like to give money out. So so they definitely would have paid that money. But other than that, I don't know a number of teams that would have paid that amount of money. But if you look at that Brock Purdy, I want to say Dak Prescott. If you
Yeah,
look
stop back, Dak Prescott.
if you look at Brock Purdy, he's gotten them to the Super Bowl, right? Um, he's gotten them to numerous championships. And you can argue and say, what do you want your quarterback to be? You want your quarterback to get you to the postseason. You want your quarterback to get you a chance at the dance. And you want your quarterback to, be in with a shout. Now, last season completely collapsed. He lost 8 of his 9 games in the stretch, right? And it's a difficult one because most quarterbacks have those kind of stretch in reverse. So they come into the league and maybe they're not very good in their first year, right? They lose a couple of games, people are thinking a bit like what happened to Jalen Hurts. He came into the league, didn't look like it was gonna amount to much, the team didn't look very good, and then the next season he comes alive, starts to play better, and people are thinking, oh, okay, there's something in there. But Brock Purdy has done it the other way around, comes into the league, you know, last pick of the draft, comes in, and then they get rid of all the quarterbacks there in San Francisco's game. He's the quarterback to take us there. And then, they've got all the Avengers around them, and then they match on. They add Christian McCaffrey, to the team. You've got Fred Warner, you've got um, Kittle, as well. You had Debo Samuel. These are players that were all at their peak, right? So the 49ers were very relevant, and he got them there, right? I remember, the game, against the Eagles. You remember that game where he came off injured? And everyone was saying, well, if he didn't come up injured, they could have won that game, right? Because at the end of the game, I think it was Christian McCaffrey at some point was playing as quarterback, just to limp over the game. So they'll think about games like that and they'll think, well, maybe if we give him the right kind of players, he can be good. It's a lot of money, but then again, right, it's only a lot of money for today because you know what's going to happen very soon. Um, Mahomes is gonna get another, on his contract. Then you've got players that are coming up for contract renewal. Joe Burrow is probably due, soon for another contract. You've got the class of Bo Nix, Jaden Daniels, as well. They're probably going to be knocking around. Jalen Hurts probably be knocking around. Remember, he got his contract, a couple of years ago, and he just won a Super Bowl. So I expect when he comes around, he will probably be the highest paid, contract. So maybe in 2 years, he might not even be in the top 12 or top 15, quarterbacks with the most money, as it goes. So is
It,
that
it,
what they should have done? I don't know.
yeah, I mean, we look at kind of just look at his productivity. He seems to average in a full, in full seasons around like 300 completed passes, around the 4,000 yards in the regular season. obviously, if we look at his career so far, just in terms of his numbers of wins, obviously he came in for the final stretch in 2022,
Yeah,
started five, won five,
yeah,
perfect record. Um, Went into the postseason, took him to 1-2, so very good production there. 2023, he had a record of 12-4. And then last season, again, it went to pot a bit when he said he was 6-9. So overall, he's got a 23-13 record in the postseason. Now, he's played two complete seasons. That seems like a major, major contract, a major jump for someone who's only played for that level of games. Now, what I will say is that he is the potential. He's a franchise quarterback. He's 25. He's a fantastic age. He could play for the 49ers another 10 years, right?
yeah,
He could be and he is now, but he could continue to be the face of that franchise, the way that Mahomes is for the Chiefs, the way that Allen is for the Bills. And I suppose it just comes down to this is how much quarterbacks get paid. And as you said, every new quarterback who's coming up who wants to get paid is
yeah,
gonna want to try and match the big boys, especially as you said, if he's taken them to the dance, he's proven that he can take a team to the Super Bowl. He just got Mahomes in whatever year it was.
yeah. It's
It's yeah, sorry, gone.
no, I mean it's a bit tough, right? Because at the end of the day, you say he came up against Mahomes, which is arguably, the best quarterback, on the planet. I kind of think if he was against another quarterback, would he probably have a Super Bowl ring? Right now. Maybe we never know, but that would always be, across people's mind. And maybe for the 49ers, that came across them as well. They thought, well, he only lost, to the best quarterback in the planet, right? So, on another, scenario, maybe he would have won. And they already have form for this. If you remember Jimmy Garoppolo, he played 7 games. He was flawless in those 7 games, and they gave him a bag of money too as well. So the 49ers, when they seem convinced about a quarterback, they go ahead and give the money out.
Hmm.
Time's gonna tell though. But like you say, he's gonna be there for a long time. So maybe they're also paying, for his age and potential that he might, go ahead and do something. Personally, I can't see the 49ers getting to another Super Bowl. People always talk about the Super Bowl window, where you've got all the right players, and everything just kind of clicks and a little bit of luck as well. And it seems like they've run through that cycle where they were constantly, getting into the championship games, getting into the Super Bowl, knocking on the door, but never ever cracking it. And at some point, you take a seat back because you can't pay everyone. Debo Samuel is gone. Trent Greenlaw has also left as well. They're probably talking about Fred Warner, whether they're going to give him money or not. We don't know whether Christian McCaffrey is going to have a full healthy season, right? Kittle is probably another year older. So you're hoping that they must have done something in the draft that's going to rejuvenate that team. But I would be surprised, if they make it. It's hard. Look at Aaron Rodgers. He went to the Super Bowl, and then he hasn't been there since, and he's almost out of the league, right? So
I
it,
mean,
it
the difference with Rodgers, I guess, is that there was a period, and we're seeing this with Allen, and we're seeing it with Lamar now, constantly in the conversation about MVP, right? Despite the Packers not necessarily getting Super Bowls, let alone winning one. Obviously, you said they got the one. Purdy's been to a championship game in his first half of season. Then he got that injury in the NFC Championship game. Took him to the Super Bowl, lost in overtime, and then obviously the whole team, not just Purdy. When I say it's the whole team had a nightmare
yeah.
last season. They're in a they're going to be in a tough division again, aren't they?
Mhm.
You've got the Cowboys, the Jalen Daniels is obviously they're going to be looking to improve. You've got the Eagles, Super Bowl champions. Got the Lions looking to, again, potentially looking strong. It's going to be incredibly tough in that division
Yeah.
next year. But again, it's this is old man yelling at the clouds here. It's like, yeah, it's an insane amount of money, but that's what QBs get paid. And but you make a good point. If he was on the market, who else would have taken him?
Yeah.
Because we talked about we did our draft review. There's a good section of QBs coming next year,
Yeah.
and a lot of people are going to probably be putting their money in the draft next year rather than on, you know, $300 million on a QB. But yeah, I think it's incredibly interesting. The main thing is the spotlight's on him now. This is absolutely make or break now for Purdy. You get paid that money, you have to perform.
I want the same energy that they've given to all the other quarterbacks who've had big money. He
Hmm.
needs to have that same energy as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay, well, I'll tell you what. Let's call that there in part two. We will be back in part three, which we had titled "The Most Disrespected QBs Debate." But if anything's going to be like our little chat pre-show, this is probably going to be around about one particular quarterback. So we will see you in part three.
I'm the, I'm the, I'm the.
Welcome back to part three of Across the Gridiron. So, as I queued up in the end of part two, we are going to talk about the most disrespected QB debate, which is what Eddie has put it in brackets. Let me rant about Dak Prescott for a moment. So, this comes off the back of the Bleacher report, which basically listed their top QBs by rating after the draft. Now, it is no surprise. I'm going to pull up the list. I'll just list them in reverse order because again, there's only 12. So in 12th place we had Tua at the Dolphins. In 11, Jordan Love at the Green Bay Packers. 10, Brock Purdy, Mr. Money, as we've now been talking about, in 10th place. We had 9, CJ Stroud. 8, Jaden Daniels after an amazing rookie season last year with the Washington Commanders. He had 7, Jared Goff for the Detroit Lions. 6, Justin Herbert of the Chargers. 5, Super Bowl winner Jalen Hurts. 4th, multi Super Bowl winner Patrick Mahomes. Joe Burrow at the Bengals at 3. Lamar Jackson number 2. And of course, Josh Allen number 1. So they're the Bleacher Report's top 12. Now, I think that makes sense because it's put Tua in there. But there's a certain name missing from that. I can't put my finger on who it is. But go on then, Eddie. Who would
Baker
you think are some of
Mayfield.
the who are some of the candidates from the most disrespected QBs who aren't on that list? Go on, the
Let's
floor is yours, my friend.
let's start with Baker Mayfield, right? I know everyone is expecting me to
You
say
haven't even
what
got him
makes
on this
sense.
list. He's not even in the notes.
Baker Mayfield, I think, is disrespected. I think you've got to look at a player who had pretty much a dysfunctional organization. I think in hindsight, we can look back and say, the Browns have been dysfunctional. And they continue to display that trait, year in, year out. So he comes out, of the Browns, almost like escapes from there. And then he goes to I think was it the Panthers, or so was it the Patriots? He goes
Patriots, wasn't it?
he goes to a team and then that doesn't work well. And then he goes to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And it seems like he's now found a home that he's now thriving on. Um, he's played against some very good teams and won games as well. And I think that, he got paid, last year and he was just paid, wouldn't even consider it to be a lot of money, and everyone thought that was great business by the Buccaneers. But I think that, considering where some other quarterbacks, like for example, Trevor Lawrence, how much they've gotten, I wouldn't take Trevor Lawrence ahead of Baker Mayfield. I don't know how many people would do that. And Trevor Lawrence is way up there in terms of, quarterbacks making the most money in the division. He was the number one draft pick as well, same as Baker Mayfield. So you could argue, why isn't he getting the same, amount of treatment that Baker Mayfield is getting? So I sort of look at that, and I think that there are always narratives that builds around certain quarterbacks. And once that narrative builds, it's very difficult to shake that narrative. And I think Baker Mayfield is one of those quarterbacks that have got a narrative built against him. And, I mean, I think last year everyone was saying, oh, you don't want to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? Because they're a scary team. You just don't know, and they play people tough. They absolutely play teams tough. And that's because of Baker Mayfield. Um, so I think he's very, very disrespected. Of course, the next player that I'm going to talk about, who's very, very disrespected is Dak Prescott. The Bleacher Report didn't even have him on the list in their rankings at all. And for me, people are getting excited about the rookie quarterbacks like Jaden Daniels, and of course they should, right? But people have forgotten that Dak Prescott was the OG, right? He was really the one that had that rookie season that was out of nowhere, right? He comes in a fourth round pick into America's team, right? Tony Romo goes down, back injury in the preseason game. Dak Prescott comes in and lights out, goes 13-3 in the regular season. He played an unbelievable game against the Patriots, right? And they really should have, progressed in that game. But some miraculous, free kick goals that I watch that every now and then. That ball was, I don't know whether you ever saw Roberto Carlos, Tour de France goal, where
Tour de France.
yeah, I
Do
think
you
it
mean
was Tour.
do you mean no? Tour de France is a cycling race. You mean the Tour Noir?
Yes,
The
that
Tour Noir.
that
See
one.
Roberto Carlos on his bike just weaving in between traffic.
Well, the ball felt like it was weaving in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
air,
yeah, yeah. He was,
going.
he was just pissed on a bicycle, wasn't he? Just yeah.
Well, relevant analogy, wrong spot, but
God.
but that was how that that kick was, and Dak Prescott lost that game. I remember he went to the Steelers where the Steelers were, formidable. This is Ben Roethlisberger's Steelers when they still had Antonio Brown and all of those guys there, and they ran wild, over the Steelers. And so he finishes 13-3 in his rookie season. Had only four interceptions and he's done, something that a lot of quarterbacks have done now, and everyone's got excited about. Now, people don't understand what it means to quarterback for America's team, right? This is a team that cannot get out of their own way. As much as I love them, much as I support them, but they always find a way to create some kind of dysfunction. Sometimes they send Dak Prescott out there to the season without any help. I remember 2018, they were talking about having a wide receiver by committee. And, they were throwing to players that were dropping the ball, couldn't catch, couldn't get separation. And then what happens? You give him an actual receiver like a Mari Cooper, and what happens? That Prescott takes off, right? And he now has a magical end run to the end of the season. And then the next season, they're competitive again. If you give Dak Prescott good players, and I think you have to say that every team needs good players. We're talking about Jalen Hurts. We're talking about the Eagles right now. And the Eagles have got AJ Brown, Devonta Smith. These guys are no scrubs, right? And then they get Saquon Barkley. And what do? They go ahead and win the Super Bowl. And I don't think that, as much as people like to say, oh, they've got, nine all pro players and all of that stuff. But sometimes you need a player who can break a tackle and hit 50 yards, right? Saquon Barkley is that kind of player. He can do that. If you look at the Detroit Lions, they've got a player like Jameson Williams Last season, he had 5 plays of 50 yards. Right? That's hard to do, right? You need a player that can do that. Tyreek Hill before he went to Dolphins, right? In the Kansas City Chiefs. You give him the ball and he breaks tackles 20 yards, 30 yards. You always need that go-to player that can take a 5 yard run and make it 50 yards. Every team needs that. And I think that Dak Prescott, he had an MVP stolen from him. Yeah, I said it. He had an MVP stolen from him the year that Lamar Jackson won. Because what did they do? They changed the narrative about the MVP because it was always about yards, always about who had the most touchdown passes and all of that. And then no, they said, "Oh no, you went head to head against Lamar and you lost, so you can't have, the MVP." And Lamar gets the MVP vote. And
You know,
for me,
I guess you're talking about a 2023 season, yeah?
yeah, I'm talking about 2023 season. And I think that, Dak Prescott, he's a very, very good quarterback. I think that when you get into the playoffs, it's not just about the quarterback, it's also about coaching. You've got to have the right coach calling the right kind of plays, but you also have to have the right mentality in the rest of the team. You know, when people talk about Dak Prescott not performing in the postseason, people don't also talk about the fact that you've got offensive line, who can block, you know, the boy is practically scrambling. So after a while, every quarterback starts to press. There's no question about it. We saw it again, Jared Goff, last season. Jalen Hurts didn't really have enough opportunities to do that. Why? Because he could just hand the ball to Saquon Barkley and he would take off. But if you're not called Patrick Mahomes, you're gonna have a stretch of time during the game where you're gonna throw picks, you're gonna, make the wrong call, and all of that. So everyone needs a little bit of help. And for people not to even rank Dak Prescott, they're ranking rookies, CJ Stroud, who had a down year last season, ahead of Dak Prescott. And people are going to say, oh, well, it's about the potential and everything like that. But for me, I think Dak Prescott always does it. He needs a little bit more help. And why isn't there any question about Lamar Jackson? Because he's done as much in the postseason as Dak Prescott has,
Well,
right?
I think this is what it boils down to. I think, and look, I've as much as I would like to rag on you about anything to do with the Cowboys, I'm tend to agree with you in this particular case. It is probably true that generally just because of his age and his people might be looking at his injury hit season last year that he might be on a downward trajectory. But we're not. But we're talking about 2 years ago, as you said. Oh, he led the league in completions. He led the league in long passes. He led the league in touchdown throws in 2023, right? And if you look at his, and I suppose there's two ways of looking at it, is that do you rank quarterbacks on the ability of them to get a team to the playoffs or how they perform in the playoffs? Because if you look at Dak Prescott, since he was a rookie, when he was rookie of the year in 2016, every time he has played 9 games or more in a season, he has not had a losing record. He's had one tie record in 2019. He had a losing record in 2020, but he only played 5 games and he was 2-3. Last year he had a losing record, but he was 3-5 in 8 games. So fantastic at getting the team to the playoffs. But as I said, when he gets to the playoffs, he's 2-5. He's been one and done in 3 of those, right? So obviously things have not worked out for him in the playoffs. However, you look at some of the people on that list. Yes, CJ Stroud, bags of potential. Jaden Williams, bags of potential. Done it for one season. I would even, as much as I love the guy, you would look at someone like Tua, who they've got at 12, and Bleach report in the guy's report said doesn't really pass the eye test, but he does pass the numbers test. But, you know, Dolphins have struggled to get to the playoffs, let alone perform in the playoffs. So don't know if it's a case of disrespect, but I am with you. I'm surprised that he is not even in the top 12 because there are lots of people in that list he could um he could have replaced. And
Yeah,
again, I
they've
agree with
got
you on
Justin
Baker
Herbert
Mayfield,
in there.
and there's a couple others I would also throw in. You got Matt Stafford. I'm
Yeah,
surprised he wasn't higher up on that
yeah,
list.
he's not on the list. They had Justin Herbert in the list. I'm like, what has he done? Right,
I
I don't
think
even know if he's gone even into the postseason.
I think there's a tendency to look at sort of the sort of who are the shiny sort of new things in the league, right? And the one I'm surprised at, I mean, look, the fact that Josh Allen's number one won't surprise anyone. I'm
Mm,
surprised Mahomes is fourth because I mean he won't give a toss. He'll just look at how many super
no.
rings he's got on his fingers and he'll say, yeah, yeah, you. Um, but yeah, look, I mean, I think when it comes to sports, it's always just a matter of someone's opinion.
True.
Um, I am surprised. I said I'm surprised at Prescott not making it. I'm surprised that they've put like Daniels in there purely based off one season. Am I surprised that they put Brock Purdy in there? Maybe a little bit. CJ Stroud, as you said, but someone say like Prescott too and Stafford, maybe on the tail end of their career. So again, that's one thing that they might be looking at. But sometimes, as you said, there is media narrative against some of these. And look, if Prescott stays fit this season and he takes the Cowboys to another winning season, he takes them to the playoffs. He won't care. He's not in this Bleacher Report, and,
No,
and and to be fair, Eddie, nor will you, because you'll go into the playoffs, you'll play the Eagles, and you'll lose. So it's all absolutely fine. But look, I think that's probably a good time to call this week's episode of Across the Gridiron. You know, lots of good stuff we've talked about. But yeah, I think I said the NFL season is nearly upon us. We're going to be back next week to talk about something else, which will probably result in Eddie ranting about the Cowboys for another 20 minutes. If you don't, if you have any suggestions what we want to talk about and see what else Eddie can turn into a rant about Dallas Cowboys, please leave a comment below. But as always, Eddie, take us home.
Yeah, so listen, the schedule might be set, but nothing else is, and that's the truth. Quarterbacks are still out to prove themselves this season. Defenses are going to get embarrassed, and someone is going to go from worst to first and from first to last. That's just the beautiful thing about the NFL, and it might be your team, right? So until next time, where we'll bring you another exciting episode on Across the Gridiron. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, hit the like button as well, and the notification so that you can, get that ping, anytime we drop something. It might be a rant, who knows? But until then, just take care of yourself. And let's keep talking trash at least till it's week 18.
I'm the bad guy. I'm the